New 1.2 update. Can't wait to see all of the fun and inventive ways we get to interact with the TV mode. Wait, what? What do you mean there is no TV mode?
Damn, okay, so no more TV mode in story. So it's just going to be a thing that you can do in exploration and stuff, but in the main story, they are removing it entirely.
So if you played previous versions, the developers did remove portions of TV mode from main story.
Although it's vague, they officially said that the game will eventually transition from a TV mode to a fully fleshed out environment.
Age, how do you feel about the reaction to TV mode? Oh my god. Wait guys, I actually wanted to talk about that. Okay, wait, yeah, let's do that. Okay. Actually, this is something I wanted to talk about. So yeah, 2 days ago, I saw a tweet on Twitter. Wow, I saw a tweet on Twitter. Good job. But yeah, basically, Zenless World made this tweet asking the Zenless community, do you miss TV mode? And then actually, I do have opinions. I do have opinions on TV mode, and my opinion is that I do miss TV mode, but listen, hear me out, okay? If you guys are clicking this video, you guys probably either you love TV mode or you hate TV mode, okay? I know there's the two sides of the community, but hear me out, okay? I do want to like talk about this because I put out a tweet basically responding to it. Yes, I know it's a yap fest, but I literally woke up, I saw this and I was like, you know what? I want to talk about this, so I'm gonna do that. Well, I'll read it out for you guys so you don't have to read this yourself. TV mode was honestly overhated from the start, and a complete removal of it from all the story is a huge loss in my eyes. Was it perfect on release? Hell no. Some of the earlier TV mode chapters were tedious and frustrating as hell for sure, but there are also plenty of examples where it has been used in a very creative way that adds immensely to the storytelling. And then my examples were Rena's agent story, in which we go around and then we save the little kids, and then Camellia Golden Week, in which they made lots of really cool mini games and stuff, okay? So I thought that those two were like for me, the most stellar examples of how they utilized TV mode. So that I continued. I think the ways in which the ZZZ team has been trying to work around the complete removal of it has affected the overall storytelling and pacing at times, and some of the ways in which they've been trying to accommodate for that have been big misses in my opinion. Example, 1.6 story. I meant 1.6 here. 1.6 story where they shoehorn in random 2-second puzzles just to have something to do that isn't combat. The puzzles I'm referring to are the ones in the latter half of the story when we split into the 3 perspectives. So we have Belle and Vivian, and then we have Anby, and then we have Hugo and Lycaon, okay? When we split into those 3 sections, we do some combat, and then we do those tiny ass puzzles on the interfaces for the doors, okay? Those are the puzzles I'm referring to. On top of the fact that also earlier in the story, when we're trying to decode a USB key to listen to a voice recording, the one when we were at Section 6 headquarters, okay? Those are the puzzles I'm referring to when I say they try to shoehorn in those. I say, now imagine if you could have a short section where rather than just doing 3 separate runarounds of minimal combat and little to no dialogue, you use the TV system to hack the panels whilst learning more about what's going on, and then go back into combat and round it out with story and further character interactions after. I don't need to read this verbatim, but basically what I was saying is, do I want the majority of the Zenless Zone Zero gameplay to be TV mode? The answer is no, okay? I understand that the earlier TV mode, especially like the 1.0 TV mode implementation, was pretty dog shit for the most part. There were a few exceptions, but for the most part, it was quite boring and very tedious and kind of annoying to play through, even like for me. And I have a lot of patience when it comes to game modes and stuff like this. But I feel that the Zenless team has had a complete aversion to reincorporating it into story content whatsoever, due to people bitching so hard about it online and not being open to allowing them to develop it further, when the team has proven that they are perfectly capable of harnessing the potential the TV game mode has, not just for combat. And for the combat, my example is the Hollow Zero Withering Domain, okay? Withered Domain, not Lost Void, I messed up. But storytelling as well. And then my storytelling examples were, you know, Rena's agent story, Camellia Golden Week. There are definitely misses, like the Arpeggio Fault event, which was dog shit. I think the universally accepted sentiment is that Arpeggio Fault was boring as but for regarding like the TV mode game mode itself, I feel like on release, had it been smoother and more streamlined and maybe a bit less of the main part of the story and more so a like side feature, it would have been a lot better. And I honestly disagree with the sentiment that people have, which is that TV mode inherently as a whole is really bad and would kill the game. I disagree with that. Maybe it's just my community, but from what I've seen, a lot of the people who still actively keep up with Zenless Zone Zero for the most part miss the use of TV mode in the story. So I don't know if it's just the Twitter echo chamber that doesn't even play anymore constantly complaining, or if I just have a hot take. So yeah, if you guys ended up reading or listening to this whole thing, then after this video, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think as well, because I would love to hear it and love to hear more opinions on this entire ordeal to see if I am just like part of the really tiny minority or if the minority is actually a bit bigger than I expected at first. But yeah, so the TLDR is I think TV mode adds a lot of character and creativity to Zenless and being more receptive to allowing it back to the story in a reasonable manner. Not in the same way that 1.0 implemented, okay? Not as the main gameplay, but maybe as like a side puzzle or a side content. So yeah, alongside the current iteration of gameplay would allow the uniqueness of the story concept in Zenless World to really shine. So that was my opinion. I still stand by that because I personally feel like TV mode as a whole, listen, 1.0 implementation, dog shit, okay? I can understand that. But there were still times where I do feel like TV mode was fun. I really enjoyed Chapter 3, Victoria Housekeeping. When, you know, you're going through the system, you're chasing the ghosts into the different puzzles. I thought that that puzzle was super, super fun. But there were also parts that were really, really bad, like the detective part when we were, I think, with PubSec. I think it was the PubSec arc where we were doing like this detective searching stuff. That part was so boring. I really wanted that to be done. The general sentiment I have seen with TV mode as a whole has been basically everyone just yelling that it sucks, get rid of it. And then clearly that is what Zenless also heard, and then that's what they did. Was it 1.2 or what? That's what they did in 1.1. The next update they did was the Jane Doe update, right? Those are my thoughts. My thoughts is I want TV mode back in. So what do you guys think? I mean, a lot of people had a lot of responses to say here. My proposal, okay, what I want from TV mode, I think that it would be really nice if alongside like what we currently have, which is, you know, a lot of combat and then story and cutscenes, we could also use the TV mode as a kind of side puzzle haver to replace some of these parts of the story in which you are literally doing nothing but kind of just shoving in like random ass puzzles just for the sake of puzzles. My example being 1.6, the second half of 1.6, where you kind of spend a lot of time just basically just doing combat between the three perspectives that doesn't really accomplish anything, and then you do like a small puzzle at the end that also doesn't really accomplish anything. I feel like that was personally really outside of like the character interactions and story itself. I found that part kind of boring, okay? Like when I went to Anby's perspective and I was just like fighting again after I had already fought from Vivian's perspective, and then after that I went to Lycaon or Hugo's perspective where I fought again. I was like, guys, this is... I get wanting to fight, and I do think that it's nice to have fighting, especially because a lot of people play Zenless for the fighting. But if it's not adding anything to the story, then it is the same as having a game mode that, you know, like people are saying that the game mode adds nothing to the story because they think it's boring, okay? Like, I feel like they can utilize it in a smart way. Kind of like how in Camellia Golden Week, right? In Camellia Golden Week, they used the TV mode as a kind of mini game. They had these different mini games within the TV mode that you could play. Yeah, and that was really fun and really fresh and super enjoyable, personally. I know some people probably still have a really huge hate boner for the TV as a whole, so they might not have enjoyed Camellia Golden Week, but I think objectively, it was creative. It was creative and it was pretty fun for the most part. But don't you love running around very slowly as Belle in the Hollows? Like, I think the story of them, you know, they've put faith into the Hollows. Maybe it's just because it was the first iteration, but one thing I did notice was running around as Belle in the Hollows was a little bit annoying as well because of the fact that Belle doesn't have a dash. Unlocking this map with those codes, like that part I think was fine. But again, like if maybe you had a bit of like a tiny TV mode section to actually find the code rather than just running around picking up a code and then running around picking up another code and then running around and picking up another code. I feel like there's definitely a way that you can make it more interactive, and I personally feel like the TV system could be the answer. Those are my like general thoughts on the TV mode, and then I was curious to see what people were saying. Yeah, for the most part, it seems like there's actually is a large amount of people who do miss the TV modes, okay? Obviously, there's also a lot of people who disagree and don't like it. We need a balance of combat and TV mode. Exactly. Like, I think the issue with 1.0 was that it was mostly TV mode, okay? I think the difference is like the current state of the game. There's been so many patches that have passed since then. So the current state of the game obviously is more focused on combat, and then the storytelling is honestly kind of the same with the comics and then the talking. But the gameplay itself, it is more heavily combat focused, which I think is a good direction. Okay, I do think that it was important for them to head more in the direction of focusing on, you know, the fighting itself, since that was one of the bigger selling points for Zenless at first. But if you really think about it, right? Combat is a very good part of Zenless, but what really does set Zenless apart from other gacha games then, outside of the combat? The concept, the creativity of the world, and how they're willing to try out new things and different things with the game. And I feel like the TV mode is one of those things. They tried out the TV mode. They tried out a few iterations of the TV mode. You know, a lot of them didn't work out, but I just feel like people really just need to give it another chance. I would really like if they could at least add it back in for some events, you know, some side quests, side stories. There's some side commissions that had TV mode that were really cool. One of the things about the Zenless storytelling as well is I think overall it's pretty good, but there are definitely some pacing issues here and there that I do feel like are probably a result of the fact that they have completely eliminated the TV mode from the game, because the game was designed with the TV mode in mind, right? Their story, their portrayal of the story. So the fact that they had to completely eviscerate it from the game. Fairy is a big example. Fairy plays a major role in the story. She's literally one of the massive AIs, mysterious AIs who we found, and is supposed to be one of the most important characters. And yet, I feel like for the past few patches, Fairy has genuinely played like she has had no relevance, like at all, okay? Sure, she showed up here and there, but that was about it. Sure, you can argue that they weren't main story patches, but here's the thing. This current patch, 1.6, it was a main story patch, right? It's literally the epilogue after the season 1 story. And then they brought up this whole like faith in getting their powers back. And then Fairy kind of existed for like 2 lines and then just did not appear again. So I'm also worried about how they're going to try to work around writing Fairy back into the story, because a big part of the Fairy interactions were through the HDD system, which, you know, was the TV mode. So I feel like if we could have a bit of TV mode here and there, again, not the main bulk of the story, but as like parts interspersed throughout, it would be a nice way to also reintroduce Fairy and then use her and the TV mode in places where it makes sense. Not every story needs a TV mode, okay? But I do feel like some of the main story chapters could benefit from it. The problem with no TV mode is that there's not much overworld where things take place. In other games, we just have the town. Yeah, that's another thing too, right? I feel like having the TV mode for side content would be a nice idea, because once you finish the story, and once you finish the combat quests, what is there to do? Also, do people not get bored of doing the same combat event over and over again? Because if you really look at the events from the past while, because they have completely given up on doing TV mode events, the past few events have just been reiterations of, you know, like some combat, which is fine. It's fine to have variations of combat, but to me, some of the current and past events have honestly blended together. Because it's just, I go in, I fight, and then I take my stuff. Rather than being able to play something like Camellia Golden Week, where there's actually like different mini game modes that were super interesting alongside like a more fleshed out story, because at the end of the day, the TV mode probably takes less effort for them to code, right? So when they made that event, they probably had more time to focus on actually giving it a story and plot, because they didn't have to spend as much time coding the rest. So, oh, there's just like, there's so many variables. We don't even do anything with the Pulchra event. We only talk and get rewards. Yeah, and I think events like that are fine if you put those events alongside other events that also give you stuff to do, like Camellia Golden Week or the Bangbu Fall Guys event. Okay, the Bangbu Fall Guys event was also really cool. But they can't do that for every patch. They can't do a Bang Boo Fall Guys event every single update, because stuff like that takes a lot of time to develop. Not to be a company defender, but at the end of the day, they still need time to develop things. I'm not trying to excuse lazy content, but you gotta be realistic about what a team can do without burning them out if you want them to continue working your game without burnout. But okay, let me see if we can find any people who disagree. Basically, a lot of players did come back after they heard the TV mode was gone, including Ryuku. And he said, I restarted playing after 1.4 where they significantly removed it, and I enjoyed playing a lot more nowadays. And yes, again, I do agree. The current system is better than the 1.0 system, okay? 100%. First impressions make a lasting impact, for sure, for sure. And that's the thing. That's a good point, because I feel like a lot of people's first impression of the TV mode was 1.0. Which was a very bad first impression. It also left a bad first impression on me. I was initially also glad they got rid of TV mode. I think 1.1 was very good. The story itself, with Jane Doe and then fighting monsters, and the way that it played out, very effective. I thought it was great. But that's because Jane Doe's story is a much smaller story in isolation on its own, rather than a overarching faith and related story, if that makes sense. But in terms of like the overhate, I guess when I say overhate here, from the start, it's more so, I think it's more the continued hate, okay? Let me rephrase this. For me, I feel like the continued hate of the TV mode since the start. And while I do think it's good that Hoyoverse was listening to players, okay? And in terms of Zenless, I do think that the Zenless team has been very receptive to player feedback. It would be nice if they would be willing to take a very small step and maybe reintroduce it, even if it's not the main story, reintroduce it as a side story, a side event. Listen, Bernice is one of my favorite characters in this game. One of my favorite characters since before the game came out, and since the game has come out. I love her to death. Her agent story was dog shit. There was nothing in her agent story, okay? Nothing. Nothing happened. We fought a few monsters, we talked to her for like 2 seconds, had a few jokes, that was it. There was nothing of substance in Bernice's agent story. If the alternative is having these, some shallow stories that have nothing in them as well, it's just as bad as having a bit too long of a story in TV mode. Rena's side story was so good, and the way they used the TV mode in it was so nice. It was creative, it made sense for what was going on, and it was fun. And then, oh yeah, my big issue with the TV is how often it forces you to swap and fight back and forth. Explore levels that are only TVs, I don't mind. The worst part of losing the TVs is that the hard mode story levels are awful now. Used to take 1 to 3 minutes, now 5+ go story, and puzzles are part of the fight. See, okay, I disagree with the hard level puzzles being like longer now. I don't think it's inherently a bad thing if some stories are longer, because listen, it's like if everything is super fast, then like maybe I'm not sure like which hard mode story levels they're specifically referring to, but I think stories can be longer, provided the content in the story actually has substance. I think running through the hollows is fine. It's fun. People like running around using their agents, sure. So it's like basically you have story, you run around the hollow for 5 minutes, and then you have like a bit of dialogue, and then you run around the hollow for another 5 minutes. Those are the parts where I feel like the pacing is just as bad. Padding the content through combat is also not the answer. And that's where I feel like TV mode would be a nice slot in. To be honest, the combat in ZZZ is very basic, and they have to improve that too. You put out the animations and you have very basic combat system. Yeah, and it's fine if the combat system is simple. I personally enjoy the combat system a lot because it is simple. I actually prefer it over much more complex ones. If the combat is too simple and then you are focusing like so hard on it, when there isn't much variety, especially in the story, because in the stories, they don't really have modifiers, right? I think the Zenless does a pretty good job at making the combat interesting in the endgame modes, like, you know, Hollow Zero or Lost Void. Those are really fun. They give you these extra combat mechanics. They let you change agent skills. Those are very, very fun. But you don't get those in the main story. So in the main story, if you're just constantly fighting with that like simple combat mechanic that doesn't really feel like there's too much to it, it's also a bit boring. Yeah, I found it constantly annoying to go from TV to battle back to TV. Yeah, I also agree with that. But I do feel like that could definitely be fixed with the QOL, which they have implemented, because Hollow Zero now, if you go play the TV mode, is a lot smoother without the constant back and forth. That's the thing. I do think that if you're constantly swapping back and forth between TV and battle, yes, that is annoying. So rather than but that won't be necessary if we implement the TV mode as a smaller part of the story, because you would have a section that's just like a bit of TV, and then you would have a section that's the combat, and then you have a section that's the story, right? It's not like you're swapping back and forth immediately between the two. It's more like you're using the TV mode as a kind of separate little game mode. That's not the main source. The reason that it was annoying before, and the reason that you had to constantly go into combat during the TV mode, was because of the fact that the TV mode was the main. So if the main system is still the running around and doing combat, and then you place the TV mode as the extra, I feel like that would be much more enjoyable. And then you won't have the constant back and forth. And then on top of the QOL that has been implemented that made it a lot smoother, it would feel a lot better. I wish they do more TV events and endgame stuff with it, because I miss those, like the Archipelago one. Yeah, I think that it would be nice if they could implement it into more endgame, but personally do a bit better than Archipelago. I think Archipelago was fun at first. It's just that it's so much repetition that it got boring because there wasn't that much to it. So if they can do an endgame mode that is fun and creative, like Camellia Golden Week, the world's your oyster. Yeah, like, so people like it. The idea was interesting. It wasn't fun at all. And I don't think it could have been fun considering they advertised themselves as an action combat RPG. But that's where I disagree. I do agree that it was a bad idea to advertise as an action combat RPG and then use the TV mode. For the most part, that part I agree with, but I don't agree with the fact that I don't think it could have been fun, because they have proven that it can be fun through the game modes I've mentioned like multiple times. So there definitely is a possibility that they can make it fun. It's just that it's when the expectation does not match the actual, you know, content that you're given, that's when people will be upset. And that definitely was part of it with why people were so upset with the TV mode, because they expected it to be mostly combat and then it wasn't. Yeah, I liked TV mode, yet the ironic thing is that all my friends that complain about it don't even play anymore, yet the ones who do still play daily have expressed that they enjoyed or appreciated the feature. It was only ever gonna get better over time. Yeah, see that's kind of like how I felt, right? I felt like everyone that I knew who really hated the TV mode doesn't really play Zenless anymore, which is why I wanted to ask you guys, okay? I'm asking you guys in chat and on the YouTube comments if you're watching this. Are you someone who still actively plays Zenless? Did you quit? Did you come back? Like what was your overall, I guess, relationship with the TV mode and Zenless Zone Zero, and how did they interact with one another? Because I really want to know that. I want to know if I am in the very sad sad minority, or if I am justified in my opinion, I guess. It's like, did you want a complete lynching of the TV system, or did you just want more combat? Yeah, I guess, you know, like TV mode isn't for everyone, so I can get if there are people who just did not enjoy it as a whole. Like, as an enjoyer though, as someone who did enjoy it, I just feel like, you know, it feels a little bit unfair that, you know, for, you know, they're catering to the people who obviously didn't enjoy it, but then what about the people who did? You know, can't the Zenless team give the people who did a little bit of TV game mode if they don't want to put in the main story, so that, you know, people who don't enjoy it like you are able to just ignore it? Okay, so what are your thoughts on my proposition, which was that what if they add the TV mode back in very small sections to use as puzzles? Not the main story, not the main thing, but like mini puzzles, like small sections of Chameleon Golden Week, like, you know, like the mini games, right? They use the TV mode to make mini games in the puzzles in the story to replace the kind of brain dead running around that we currently have. The other problem was that some of those TV mini games take too much time and not that good either. But that's the thing. It's like those mini games. There's so much potential for them to make mini games that actually work. 100%. Like, if we're talking about alternatives, then, you know, there definitely are ways that they can make the story more interesting outside of just what they're currently doing, which is making us run around. I think the general sentiment is we're not asking for them to make it back into 1.0, okay? No one wants that. We just want people to be more receptive and more open-minded to allowing HoYoverse and the Zenless team to try out some different things with the TV mode, because we personally feel that the TV mode has a lot of potential to be very fun. I hope that if this video was coherent and you watched till the end, it might be able to offer you a perspective from the other side, from the people who do like the TV mode and wish that it could be used in some way. I just wish that people would be more open-minded and willing to let companies try out different things with the games when those things are creative and fun and different from other games too. Because if you don't let games try out new things, whether it's a hit or a miss, then you're just going to be left with the same few iterations of the same types of games, and then everything is just going to feel the same. Yeah, that's the point of this video. If you guys did watch, I hope you can at least like understand it from a different perspective. I hope this was able to give you a bit of insight into that. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys still disagree, still disagree, or actually, you know, like it was able to let you see a different side. Please be respectful though, because if you're not being respectful, you know what's gonna happen. I just wanted to talk about it. I know we didn't go through all of the comments here, and I know there's a lot of different stuff here, but there are definitely ways that they could make it more fun. And again, it doesn't have to interrupt your main story experience. Though I do feel personally that it would be nice to have a bit more in the main story, but you can disagree with me. Let me know. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to like, subscribe. If you didn't, feel free to dislike. Totally valid. But either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree in the comments, and then join the Discord server if you want to also come chat, hang out, and have a good time in general. But yeah. Thanks for watching, YouTube, and I will see you guys in the next one, I guess. Bye-bye!